Vayolen Shom, when I say he didn't rest, obviously we're talking about this because this is important for us to take a lesson. And I want to make sure that this lesson is not misunderstood. Because, we are all in the fight game, in a sense. Obviously, I don't want that to be misunderstood either. Don't go outside and punch somebody. We are all in the fight game in the sense that we want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, which in itself is its own fight, because we all have personal challenges. And those challenges, again, they're a feature, not a bug. That's part of the plan. That's part of the journey. And then we want to get out into the world and interact with people and interact with the world and be an ambassador for divinity and for godliness and integrate godliness and divinity into the world through our interactions with it. If we get out in that world and we haven't slept, we haven't taken care of ourselves, the risk goes up astronomically. If someone's going for a world championship title match in combat sport and they've trained for a year and had the best trainers and done everything perfectly, and then for the week before the match they just don't sleep, let's just say that wouldn't be a very good idea. So just the moral of this story here is not we should not rest because we want to push ourselves to the point of exhaustion to make sure that we're, doing as much as we can do and, etc. The lesson is that Yaakov did what needed to be done in order to be as secure and as prepared and in the best possible position. Now, a huge part of what is going to put us in the best possible position to succeed at a high level and to do so safely, to be the influencer and not the influencee, is taking care of our health, getting enough sleep, eating enough of the right foods, getting proper nutrition. Starving ourselves of food, starving ourselves of sleep is not the answer. The point here is not don't rest, right? And I would say maybe let's distinguish rest into constructive rest and then just, vegging out, not constructively. And I say it specifically because sometimes vegging out is what we need and it can be a very healthy thing to do when that's what we need. For a person to get the rest that their body needs to be at its best is something that Hashem desperately, Hashem really wants us to do. It's something that the Torah commands us to do, obligates us to do. To take care of our health, and getting enough sleep is one of the most important things. We're not saying don't get enough sleep, don't get enough rest. But to just chill unnecessarily, there's a very big difference between proper self-care, and by self-care I mean very simply taking care of our bodies, of our minds, of our brains, getting the sleep we need. And not only sleep, getting the rest we need, right? There's something called non-sleep rest. And sometimes we need non-sleep rest. Sometimes we need to create a window in our day of 10 minutes or 15 minutes or sometimes even 120 seconds can be game-changing where we just stop and just rest. We get ourselves into an internal state of rest. We go inside and we slow down and we breathe and we just actively rest without sleeping. That can be game-changing also. Getting the sleep we need, getting the rest we need is part of what we're here to do. That is part of the mission. Being lazy is a whole different story. A person can be very committed to resting. In some ways, sometimes, the person who's lazy will get less sleep and less rest than the person who's less lazy, because the person who's committed and dedicated and working hard is on top of their sleep, and that's part of their commitment, is on top of getting the non-sleep rest throughout the day that they need, and that's part of their commitment. Versus the person who's lazy, who's just like, whatever, I'll get to bed when I get there, and we all know how that ends up. Right? So I just want to make sure that's super important. And the lesson here is not, don't sleep, because Yaakov didn't sleep. The lesson here is Yaakov didn't, let's say, indulge in unnecessary downtime because he had a mission and he had to execute on that mission and he had to prepare and protect himself in his own time so that he could engage in that mission successfully and safely. And the message for us is the same. Don't be afraid of the world. If we were all just supposed to hide off in a closet and pray, there would have been no closet and there would have been no us. There would have just been a bunch of angels and that's it. We are supposed to interact with the world, and for each of us it's a different extent and a different variety, etc., separate conversation. But we are here to interact with the world, to engage with the world. Because that's the only way we can integrate divinity into the world, elevate the world, bring the light of godliness into the world through our interactions with it. If we do it correctly, as an example, as a true ambassador of the Creator. But it's a high stakes, high risk project or mission. And therefore, in our, let's say, downtime, when we're not out interacting with the world, is imperative. Part of the mission is, part of the job description of a combat sport professional, part of the job description of a professional fighter is be on top of your nutrition, and perhaps even more importantly, be on top of your sleep. Good nutrition and less sleep is probably going to make someone less well off, less in a position of strength for a fight than good sleep and less ideal nutrition. Sleep is imperative. Sufficient amount of sleep, quality of sleep, non-sleep rest. These things are imperative for us to be able to get out in the world in a way in which we are healthy, physically, neurologically, so that we can get out and do the best we can. Number one, in terms of our success of impact, and number two, in terms of our safety, so that things don't go in the reverse direction. And so the Torah tells us Yaakov's going to Haran. He stopped on the way and he rested there. Maybe there he could even afford, and I'm speaking figuratively now, he could even afford some excess indulgent downtime. He could afford to say, you know what? I'm going to stay up a little bit late scrolling on Instagram, even though I really need to go to sleep. Right? And I'm saying that in order to emphasize the point is not don't sleep and don't rest. The point is, if we want to, and it's not, I mean, any person, if a person wants to be fulfilled, I would say the extent of the statement that I'm about to say, the extent and the intensity of it varies from person to person. But the truth is, if we want to really do it the best way possible and have maximum fulfillment, we cannot afford to let our guard down. And that's what it's telling us. Yaakov didn't rest. He didn't let his guard down. We cannot afford to let our guard down. We have to make sure that we get sufficient sleep. We have to make sure that we give our bodies the nutrition they need. We have to make sure that we spend enough time, both in terms of the amount of time, the consistency, and the intensity of the experience, connecting to Hashem, making sure that we are praying. We start off the day before we, get out into the world and engage. We start off by praying. We start out Moda Ani, acknowledging and thanking the Creator for our opportunity to go and make an impact. Aligning, making sure that our conscious experience, our mind, our heart, our body are aligned with our values and with our purpose. And frankly, doing that properly depends on having gotten enough sleep and proper nutrition and proper movement and exercise, all of these things. Now, the point of the Sikha is not get enough sleep and eat properly, etc. I want to make that clear. But the reason that I'm emphasizing that so strongly is because there's room here for this to be misunderstood. And it's a message that often gets misunderstood. And then people just stay up all night doing things like, I'm going to learn more and I'm not going to get any sleep. And, it's a matter of time before things completely fall apart. And for a long time before they completely fall apart, they're very suboptimal. And we don't realize, number one, because it's gradual. Number two, because when we're underslept, part of the impairment is that we don't realize how impaired we are. And the studies are fascinating. If you test people's performance, even if a person gets 2 hours less sleep for a few nights in a row, you can see their performance can go down, in the equivalent of, the numbers are, if I don't remember exactly what they are, exactly what the metrics are, but it's to the point of IQ going down by, I think maybe dozens, a score of people can show up with symptoms of diagnosable Alzheimer's disease just because they're underslept enough. It's not a joke. And part of the impairment is that we don't realize. But when you measure it, the results are staggering. So we have to go out into the world as prepared as possible. As prepared as possible means consistently, always making sure our mind, heart, body are aligned consciously at the level of our experience with our values and with our purpose, which means studying Torah every day. It means starting our day off with prayer, making breaks throughout the day to reconnect as necessary. It also means, not resting means not letting our guard down, which means not letting our guard down about prayer, not letting our guard down about study, not letting our guard down about thinking intentionally about our purpose and our values, not letting our guard down about getting enough sleep and rest and nutrition, etc. It's all of those things. So part one is we have a mission. There's no need to be afraid of it. Part two is don't be afraid of it doesn't mean there's no risk. It means our mission is a very high stakes, high risk mission. And while we shouldn't shy away from it, we should engage in it, we do have to take responsibility to make sure that we don't let our guard down in terms of being as preparing and then maintaining that as much as possible. We can't let our guard down. It doesn't mean don't rest. It means don't let your guard down.